Hi, I'm SJ.
And I'm Pegsy. Welcome to our Heels in the Hierarchy podcast, where we discuss the experiences and challenges faced by working women today. Join us as we explore a range of topics from navigating career advancement to balancing work and personal life without stepping on toes.
Each episode features relevant topics, inspiring stories, and practical advice to empower women on their professional journey. Maybe you're a single parent to teenagers and have a high-maintenance dog, you care for elderly relatives, or you're simply spinning plates outside work too.
You'll gain new perspectives, practical strategies, and have the reassurance that even seemingly accomplished women leaders face challenges similar to yours.
In each series, we'll share career journeys and expert insights with occasional guests. Like you, they're right-born leaders, and their paths weren't always smooth. You'll hear about their stumbles and successes, their mentors and motivators, and the pivotal moments that shaped their careers, revealing the real person behind the polished exterior.
We hope you'll laugh, learn, and enjoy different perspectives around women in work and leadership and all that it entails. So step into an episode of Heels in the Hierarchy, the place where we explore current challenges and opportunities and share extraordinary insights for ordinary women, one conversation at a time. Season 1.
Season 1. I can't believe we've actually finished the finish line. I'm so proud of us. So proud of us. So we thought it'd be quite nice to do an episode on where we recap about our own experiences, because actually part of this process is about us being able to talk about our vulnerabilities, being able to be quite open, put in just some of the topics that sometimes we don't talk about on the table, and that includes ourselves as presenters and things. So yeah, today's episode we're going to be really talking about our run through, about some things you may not have known that about the episodes, some of the highlights, some of the experiences, and yeah, hopefully we'll learn something new together.
So, well, our first episode was dipping your toes into Heels in the Hierarchy, where we introduced ourselves, we shared our backgrounds, and we explained the concept and the rationale behind it. I think if we look at that episode in particular, I think one of the things that our listeners might not realise is just how long it took us to get to that point. And to be perfectly honest, just how awful it was to do that first recording, and all of the challenge of, editing and talking naturally, and also wondering if anyone would listen and be interested in anything that we had to say.
But what's really interesting is that actually, like you say, when you listen back to the episode, the feedback that we've got is that it's so organic.
Yeah.
But for us to be able to do that episode, we've had to, do quite a lot of mistakes. We've had to, before we were quite formal, just trying to practice, and neither of us have had to work in this format together before. We both had the same premise, but having to figure out what was organic, what flowed, what, people just listen, they kind of go, oh, wow, this is what you've been doing. But for us, we've been on quite a long journey trying to figure out, I suppose, what identity is, how we want to present it, what makes us comfortable. A lot of practice, a lot of, not mistakes, but more about just learning. So much to learn.
Yeah. The received wisdom when you start a podcast is just record your first podcast and put it out there. And we kept talking about doing that and then not doing it. And I don't know how many times we booked our first recording session and then we came up with something else that we needed to do to get it right. And I'd suggest that that's probably a female trait. I read somewhere that if you teach a man a new task, as soon as he's done it once, he will say that he can do it. Whereas if you give a woman the same task, she will not admit to being, she will not say that she is able to do it until she feels in her own mind that she has mastered it. So the difference between men doing it once and saying I can do it, and women doing it multiple times and feeling like they have mastered it before they'll say that they can do it. So I think even though the received wisdom is just record and go out there, I think we followed that sort of gender norm. But for me, taking our time to do that meant that we had a better sort of product to send out, first of all, to sort of put out there into the podescape.
What a word.
Into the unknown. Into the unknown, definitely. I think that was the right thing. And we we had so many sort of practice sessions, and there were all sorts of things that we got wrong, but we had loads of practice sessions, and then we went and did it. And even though I think we've come on a bit of a journey, even though in those last couple of episodes that we've done, this first series, I think it was good that we delayed until we felt, even though we weren't 100% polished, that it was right for us and that we were comfortable in our experience.
But none of us had a time frame. We just, again, expectations. We thought we needed to do it in a time frame.
Well, we kept putting the time frame back.
But I think the stretch, I must say, one of the highlights for me is just being able to try something completely different out of my comfort zone. I know we talk about it in terms of one of the episodes, but I think just doing a podcast is so different to the day-to-day jobs that until you actually physically are doing it yourself, you don't appreciate the effort, the concepts, the time that it takes. And so much that's not said when you're doing a podcast that makes a podcast work.
Yeah.
And I think my highlight, I'm going to probably say it a few times throughout this, but I just say it now, has absolutely been doing it with you, but also your work ethic on being able to go, right, let's doing it right. And I think sometimes you always say I'm too much of a perfectionist, I like everything, but actually that's what's made it perfect, because it's not like, right, okay, we've got to, I don't know, it's just enjoyable. And so that absolutely is my highlight. So I'll be interested, so I say, and curious of what the listeners think and get their feedback about the series generally, or what their highlight was, because I think for me we have different highlights, because it's not about just the episodes themselves, it's very much about the process, whereas actually the listeners have been part of that process. It's a lot behind the scenes that I haven't seen. But in terms of episodes, I'd be interested to see, so do share with us what you think your favourite episode is and why. We'll be quite fascinated to hear. And you're the one who came up with the concept about bringing TED Talks and subject matters to the table and discussing that. And actually, I didn't realise how in depth we go in our discussions.
So
the one about the likability and our inspirational women. Like the amount of research you'd done and being able to bring that to light, I was like, wow, like we go really into depth and we have completely different perspectives. So that I definitely was one of my highlights, just being able to bring our personalities to the room. And being okay with our own process of having completely different perspectives. So
I think that's a good point, though, because when we did the second episode, which was on the inspirational women, we had agreed beforehand that we weren't going to share who those inspirational women were. And they covered so many completely different people. So we had Emmeline Pankhurst, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Julia Gillard, Jacinda Ardern. I did 4, even though we'd agreed to do 3 each. And then you did Pink and Melanie Klein. And we'll get on just to sort of touching base on those particular people later on. But we were sort of talking about how they'd influenced our lives. And then what I found was really fascinating was me actually sharing the inspirational women that I'd picked with you and seeing your reaction to those inspirational women. But for me, one of the most fascinating bits was hearing about your inspirational women and seeing how many similarities they had in key themes and what have you to mine, even though they were all in different
the themes were quite similar, weren't they?
Parts of history,
But what's funny is because the episode afterwards, when we talk about the photo shoot and the pre and post, is so different. So I think, I don't know how the listeners felt, but obviously some of the recordings that we put in sequence, some of them were recorded a long time ago, and some of them are more recent. And I think that's quite interesting to see what the flow is, because we've got more and more comfortable with each other, got more and more comfortable with just having the flow of how we both think, what we kind of bring to the table. And then you've got a serious episode, we're really talking about it in depth. But then I think it's quite nice because the episode then shows more of our personalities. And then we're kind of having more of a giggle about our experiences to the same perspective, which is also that what we talk about a lot in our episodes. No matter what the topic is, it's all about perspectives, opinions, how we kind of our life experiences shaped it. So I quite like the flow, I think.
And the contrast.
Yeah, the contrast between them.
Because I have to say that photo shoot was just hilarious. I mean, the prep for it the doing of it and then the reflection back, that was just so funny. And I think that was probably us at our most authentic self. Because, I mean, we called it Feeling Our Fear and Doing It Anyway, because it really was quite fear-inducing, not only to just do a photo shoot and put ourselves out there, but what the photo shoot symbolised, and that it was kind of like, this is a bit more grown up and a bit more serious now.
And we're actually doing it. Like, there's no backing down. You know, there's been a lot of discussions and prep and different elements that you've got to set up, and like, you hear a lot of noise about what you should and shouldn't do, what you can do, and we just wanted to be very specific. But it's the first time that we had to both almost sell it authentically at the photo shoot and talk about it. And I was like, oh yeah, we haven't really talked about this bit, like how do we present that to people that we don't know? Because actually, you know, our podcast is an audible bit, so this is the first time actually they're the first people that's seen us as us in real life. So then we're, we've got to actually talk about it. So that was quite interesting, having to go figure out.
After we'd done the recording on the Feeling Our Fear and Doing It Anyway, and it does seem to be a recurring theme, but it's not defining us particularly, but we did go and have a celebratory drink afterwards. And there was a lady who just sort of said to us, oh, you seem like you're celebrating. What are you celebrating? And we said, oh, we've just recorded a new episode of our podcast. And she was so impressed. And we've spent all of these months kind of like, oh, should we be doing this?
Should we be telling anybody we're doing it?
Telling anyone? And it was so lovely to have somebody else sort of say, oh, that sounds really good. I'm going to have to listen. What's it called again? It's called Heels in the Hierarchy.
Yeah.
But
that's so nice. True, actually. Yeah, because, you know, although we talk about empowering women, it's that a lot of it, of us celebrating, is not necessarily about what we've been putting out there, but it's actually about us fulfilling something that we've talked about. I'm seeing it through to the other side. And just before you worry about it, yes, we are going to be releasing series 2 very soon. So, you know, we're not going anywhere. This isn't just a fire in the pan. Is that what we call it? A splash in the pan, or whatever this,
flash in the pan. Flash in the pan.
You know, this is something that the more we've kind of discussed, the more people we've got involved in terms of interviewing, or people that's come forward, the more we've got to talk about. Which is great and fascinating. But even when I'm talking, I'm realising I have this, you know, when you record your voice, you realise the amount of language that you use. So I say interesting a lot, I say curious a lot, and I don't realise I say that, but that's just in my conscious nature. I'm going, oh, that's really curious, oh, that's really interesting, because I never really know what you're going to say. And then I'm like, oh, I really want to pick up on that. And then I really want to pick on that. And so it's just, I suppose, for me, being more comfortable with our personalities online and our voices in the way that we would organically do, which you would hear in any conversation, but because it's going out, you know, on a podcast, it's quite interesting to hear your own voice saying these words, isn't it?
But also we got some really lovely feedback from people, it was just so positive, because again, picking up on your point about it's just us, when I'm listening to the podcast when it's gone live, I still kind of, even if I'm listening to it on my own, I get slightly embarrassed, because it's like, that's me on the radio. And that is just sort of so weird. And so to have people who haven't got a vested interest giving us really good feedback, that's just been brilliant. That's been really amazing.
So how did you find it with our first interviewee?
Oh, she was amazing. So that was Emma Anderson. And I mean, first of all, I was just so thrilled that she agreed to do it. She had such a fascinating story. And one of the things we wanted to do was to try and make each of the series have a range of different topics, but along a comparable theme. And we wanted to make sure that we interviewed authentic women. And I think the story that Emma shared, and the episode was called From Medical Aspirations to Corporate Success, which really sort of
sums it up, doesn't it?
Sums it up brilliantly, because it's such an amazing journey, that this was about an individual who had a path mapped out, and then, you know, things happened and she couldn't follow that path. And yet, for me, the level of pragmatism, self-awareness, insight, enthusiasm, embracing, or even coming up with a new dream, and that sort of that redirection that she would not have envisaged her life would have taken. And then just the sort of, I don't know, the level of philosophicalness, as I say, the pragmatism that she put into embracing that life that she hadn't set out for herself was just brilliant. I thought it was really amazing. And there were some real life lessons in there that I'm sure listeners will really relate to.
No, absolutely. I think that's the other thing, is it always added another layer. So we all go on our own journey of learning how to work together in a completely different way of working, and then having somebody else come into that and then figure out how do we do that. So then actually they were able to be fully themselves in that process as well, because actually it's not an interview, it's a conversation with, isn't it? And that's always the premise. And then trying to how do you bring out those best stories? And that was something else that we've had to kind of learn. I think our learning process has been pretty steep, but also just as enriching. So I think having, not having interviews all the time, but having them in each episode to kind of portray things is going to be really healthy, I think, because it just enhances, and also it helps people learn from other people as well, about perspective and stories, and that actually it doesn't really matter, again, where you end up. It's a lot around what makes those people fascinating is the journey they've had to take to do that. But often in the workplace or as women, that's not the first thing you see. You see the end point or where they're at in that moment, not about the challenges, the struggles, or people that's come alongside. And that's the stuff I feel in the stories and the incidents when you talk to people that encourages people to keep going, or there's little nuggets of encouragement. They go, oh yeah, I didn't really think about that. Makes so much sense. Or so, for us, my hope would be that our listeners get those nuggets and then kind of enables them to go, that's so helpful. That wasn't just a waste of their time listening to us. It was more about actually I'm enriched by that, I'm encouraged by that, or I've learned something new from that.
Yeah. I think also for me, with my background in HR and learning and organisational development, I've been involved in putting on leadership development events or away days where we've had really amazing speakers. And that's absolutely brilliant. And there's no doubt that the audience learn a lot from those amazing speakers. But I think one of the things that our listeners will get to see more and more as the various series go on is that we want the authenticity of people who are still on their leadership journey. The people that I've sort of engaged on leadership development programs that I've been asked to commission have already sort of achieved. And for me, there are so many people at various places in their leadership journey who've not necessarily identified with the person who've already achieved, simply because they have that kudos, they have that status, they have that experience, whatever it might be. And I think to listen to the really authentic stories of people who are at the beginning of their leadership journey or, still on that sort of upward trajectory, I think is really key. And I think for women who I believe are more inclined towards imposter syndrome and self-doubt and introspection and all those sorts of things, to be able to identify with people just like them, I think can be really, really impactful. And that's why I'm excited about some of the guests that we've got coming up and the stories that they're sharing. And those are about empowering our listeners and empowering women in leadership, whether it's leadership with a capital L or a small l, of just sort of leading your household. I think that is where a lot of the real benefit of learning is going to come from.
Yeah.
The authentic women with authentic journeys.
But I think, that was the whole premise, isn't it? I think we've got more organic on all fronts.
Yeah.
Generally, we've kept to what we really want your podcast to be about, eardrop into a conversation, which then it doesn't matter what the title is. It's about actually where they are, what's going on in their lives, and engaging in the reality versus what's shown and what's not shown. And that's the fascination bit about it. And I suppose for us, even as doing an audio podcast rather than a video one, that for me has enabled us to be more authentic. And being able to bring out more, because actually it's that, not like confidentiality because you're sharing everything, but it's more around you taking that off the table about wondering what, the outward appearance or how you're presenting, and just be able to have a conversation and talk about it. So you're totally right. I really enjoyed actually, after doing that, we did the episode about likability. And that is something that I found, I remember we talking about that episode and doing it, and the amount of points I think we could have continually talked about. Because we talked about so many elements around culture, perspectives, sexism, all these things that just one episode that we talked about from watching it has absolutely just for me opened my eyes of going, oh my word, there's so much to talk about. It's not just about that dilemma. It was actually, there's so many layers to this. And not just in the workplace and in business, like this, the whole culture element of it, the perspective of what we think about is shaped by so many factors, but which we don't necessarily aware of because we're just living it. So that was really interesting of going, what that whole TED talk and that whole element brought out was actually fascinating to do. And I really enjoyed doing it. But also I wanted, that was like, it's so hard to put so much in such a short episode. Sometimes you want to talk about it. But
well, this was the likability dilemma, which was the TED talk by Robin Hauser. And I think that TED talk was only about 15-20 minutes long. But the episode itself, us talking about the TED talk, was at least twice that. And as you say, there was so much in there that we could have just talked about in so much more detail. And one of the things that we want to try and do is come back to these themes time and time again. I think the likability dilemma links to things like being a people pleaser, imposter syndrome, being authentic as leaders and authentic as women. And we've got a really, really fascinating interview with somebody coming up in a couple of months' time. And this person, I won't give details away at the moment, but this person just really, really then became their authentic self. And it's really fascinating to listen to how sort of society, culture, relationships, gender, leadership positions, pressures on us from our line managers and any number of other people shape women's expectation of how they should be. That when you have a discussion on something like the likability dilemma, it's actually something that women do talk about with a closer group of friends a little bit. But I think as the whole thing and having a discussion on just that topic, it's something that, women don't do very often and certainly don't do for very long. So it's something that I'm really looking forward to coming back and talking about.
I'll be interested as well. There's another thing about, you as an audience having these discussions. One of the things we want to see more of, and for me, I've been more curious about is, what's your perspective on what we're talking about? What's your experiences? And then letting us know actually is things actually going, oh yeah, that resonates with me, and it's my experience. Because one of the episodes we really want to do later on is all about people's stories and hearing people's stories and being able to read out people's stories, because I think that's only in storytelling that we can either heal or build a community or be able to feel connected in some way. So that's something that we're very keen on doing. But I think, it was when you're working in business, when you're working with other women and men and trying to, whatever your position is in that workplace, you can't take away that people do react different depending on either title, position and your sex. It's just the way it is. And having it on the table to discuss is refreshing, is being able to go, actually, this is our experience and we've had different experiences and we get to be able to talk about it, which is fascinating. So yeah, I've just really enjoyed the episodes. I think our last episode that we've just recently launched about was the relationship between stress and mental health.
Yeah, breaking the silence, workplace mental health.
And I think that's, for me, I hope that people are able to engage and listen to that as well. But I think, with somebody who works in mental health and trying to work with people, is that you can't take away the power of influence within the workplace. Your manager, your support network, your workload, how people react, things that you can do within your own control, your things that you can do when you're feeling out of control. There's so many elements to it because we're complex human beings. And I think that's another episode we could have kept talking about because there's so much in it, because regardless where you are, it's something that, we all experience and we all have to work through, isn't it? So
yeah. And there's a lot of pressure, I think, in society for us to be copers, just be resilient and, power through. As women leaders, there are expectations on us to be quite, I don't know, almost all things to all people. We have to be supportive, but not too supportive.
Yeah.
We have to be very focused on our time management and our effectiveness. We have to be good at delegating. But if we delegate too much, then we're not doing our jobs properly. But if we don't delegate enough, then we're not doing our jobs properly. If we have to do a restructure that is directly affecting our own teams, if we have any sense of an emotional effect on us because we understand the financial, emotional, professional impact on those people going through the restructures, then we're not being true leaders, and we're supposed to be a combination of kind of, professional.
You're either too much or too little or not enough. And it's constant balancing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And feedback. The amount of feedback I think we don't ask for, but we get.
Yeah.
Where you don't get that. But yeah, I mean, generally overall, I think I'm so proud of us, like in the best way rather than the patronising way, because, we've never done this. It's always been something that we've taken on a risk. We've got complete different experience, but it's just, I feel that we bring out the best in each other and we've got very comfortable. We know how each other works. We know what we bring to the table. And it's been very smooth in that aspect. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel there's an ego issue.
No.
Here. And I think that when we're talking about encouragers, we talk about people that you've got your corner, and here we are just doing it, which we absolutely wouldn't have done 2 years ago. So the fact that we're doing this and we've actually finished season 1, and like we say, we're not encouraging this, but considering we don't even have a glass of wine to celebrate this, I'm disappointed in us, but we will have celebrations. And I think, it's marking those moments. It doesn't matter who else is thinking this is not important or it's just another season. For us, absolutely it is. It's a marking of the moment of that we've completed it. We had an idea, we've nurtured it, we've created it, we've had to learn all these technical elements, and especially on your part, I mean, the technical knowledge that you have that you didn't have before, and now you know.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, absolutely, run with it.
Yeah.
And the trust I feel that we've built with each other it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't really care what other people think outside of this. I love you. But it's just been wonderful and I've really enjoyed doing it. And I think we'll just keep going and keep, it's not like, we've done what we've wanted to do. It's like now we've really got the momentum.
Yeah.
We've got a whole series and we've got a whole series 2 coming out, and then we've got series 3 coming out. We've planned, I think, up to series 6 at the moment.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said with persistence, creativity, and doing it anyway, regardless of what the outcome is.
Well, one of the feeling the fear and doing it anyway type of things, I've got a holiday coming up. Haven't actually done it yet, but I thought I would introduce myself as a podcaster.
Yes,
when I'm on holiday.
Yes, I'm so proud of you. Yes, absolutely. But you're a creator. You can have all these
content
things.
creator.
Content creator. You're a publisher. Like the amount of stuff that you've been doing, techie stuff. Like it's almost like we're scared of saying all the things that we are. But this podcast would not be feasible if you hadn't done it.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't gone, right, love.
Right, get on with it. Yeah.
When are we going to launch this podcast?
That's the thing, is that you find your people, you find the right people, and then you do it.
Yeah.
And I think, we've been able to do it where other people might have not done, or they would have stopped after the first hurdle. And we've got grit, we've got determination, and we'll just keep creating.
We've got outtakes as well.
Oh, yes. I mean, at some point, people will be able to go and go, oh, yes, I know what they're talking about now. But yeah, overall, I hope, you've all been able to enjoy the series as much as we've been able to enjoy recording every episode. I absolutely would love feedback. So please let us know what your thoughts are, what's your been highlights. And, we want to encourage a community that is authentic, that build connections, that empower each other, and that is authentic to share stories that will encourage and build people up.
Yeah. I think that is a brilliant summary of our aspirations. I think it's a great way to end episode 7 of series 1. Woohoo! With series 2 already in pre-production.
I know. So yeah, we're saying like it's ending, like we're just starting.
Yeah,
I think it's a lovely way. It's a lovely way to kind of conclude series 1, knowing what's coming in season 2.
Yeah,
the guests that we've got, the elements that we're talking about, and I can't wait to be doing this at season 2 and realizing, oh my word, there's even more that we've been doing and learning. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I absolutely have loved doing season 1, and I am incredibly proud. And now we can have a little bit of a break before it goes out for season 2.
Brilliant. So we are going to finish by saying, keep your heels high
and your standards higher.
And we look forward to seeing you in season 2. Woohoo!
Thanks for joining us today on Heels in the Hierarchy with SJ
and Pegsy. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please spread the word and share it with your work bestie, your mentor, or anyone with their heels in the hierarchy.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and if you could spare a moment to leave us a review, it helps our other ambitious women find our community.
Find us on LinkedIn and Instagram for more content and behind-the-scenes glimpses.
Until next time, keep your heels high and your standards higher.